Hi, I'm going to talk to you about another key skill of advocacy that distinguishes between the good and the outstanding, and that is your ability to look after yourself. Now, it sounds a bit strange because the focus in the relationship should be rightly on the client, but I want you to think about how you give of yourself in that relationship, because we're not dealing with washing machines. Our product isn't a phone and how usable that phone is. We don't make Mars bars and package them up. That's not what we do. Our business, our product is people. So you need to bring something of yourself to that role. Otherwise it's a bit too clinical and people won't trust us. So because of that, ultimately a good advocate, an outstanding advocate will be giving something of themselves, whether that's time or their energy or their care, they will be giving. So for me, I want you to be thinking about how you look after yourself, because if you're constantly giving and not topping yourself up, you'll run on empty. And we all know people who run on empty and they're stressed, they're no fun to be around, they're very inefficient, everything's a problem, there's drama. That's not what we want for outstanding advocates. We want people to come from a topped up place where they can top themselves up and then they can give very, very freely to the clients that they're working with. So the reason why looking after yourself is so important in advocacy is that you'll often put yourself quite deliberately in positions where you're going to get rejected. You are going to have the word no. You're going to possibly be open to criticism. I can't count the amount of times I've been told, why are you asking for this? You know this isn't possible. Why are you saying they can have these things? And all the time I'm thinking, I didn't say this, it's the client that's saying this, but I'm the one taking the flack, so to speak. But that's okay because I've got broad shoulders. But I still need to look after myself. Because if you don't, I think it can kind of take away a little bit of us. And it's connected to a bit of fear as well. So a really quick example from my professional life was a relationship, not advocacy, but a long-term relationship I had with a young person. And I didn't really know whether I was having much of an impact with them. I'd go and see them regularly and we'd spend time together. And I wasn't expecting lots of verbal feedback about whether what I was doing was any good. But I didn't have anything, you know, from a teenager. I went for 6 months and didn't know whether they even liked me going. And then one day I knocked on the door and they ran down the stairs. And I thought, that's my feedback. That's the feedback I need, not some verbal reassurances and praise that my ego needs, but actually listening for small signs that what you're doing is good. Because up until that point, if I'm being honest, I was feeling a bit rejected, that they hadn't said anything to me about, I like you coming, or thanks for coming, or something like that. And as advocates, as humans, we often need that. So the skill of the outstanding advocate, I think, is to let go of some of that need and to look for the small bits of feedback that can top us up, and that's looking after ourselves. So the 4 things I think I want to ask you to do to look after yourself. Well, firstly, I want you to be kind. I want you to be very, very kind to yourself, because we are our own worst enemies. We are so critical of what we do and don't do, and we beat ourselves up so much of the time. So I want you to be kind. And by being kind to yourself, you need to be kind to one another in your team and look after your team. I remember in a previous job, I used to manage a children's home, a small 2-bedded unit. And I would go for some coaching from a mentor about the staff team and how to manage them properly. And this particular week had been very difficult, there'd been misbehaviour, let's say, of the staff team. And I went to the mentor for some advice, and she said to me, Kate, you're not going to like what I'm going to say. So I rolled my eyes, waiting for the advice. And she said, you need to love your team. I said, don't be stupid. Imagine what I said to her. She said, you do. She said, you need to love your team, because that's the one thing the kids in care will not have, is an example of 2 adults caring for one another. And whilst it was very true in that setting of a children's home, it's true in any professional relationship. How can we congruently say to clients, I respect you and I care about what you're saying, if I can't walk that walk with my teammates? And remember, what you do in private is what you do in public. So you need to walk that walk with yourself as well as your teammates, about being kind to yourself. The second thing to do in looking after yourself is to celebrate successes. Every single little success you need to celebrate, whether that's you understood somebody correctly to get in the big outcome, or you taking a local authority to judicial review and winning this, whatever the success is, you need to celebrate them, whether that's in your literature, on your website, on your team meeting minutes, wherever it is, celebrate those successes, no matter how small. And that will top us up and give us that energy to carry on doing what we're doing. And the third thing I want you to think about is the culture that you create in your organisation. Often when we have negative feedback or complaints, it goes in and it just stays there and festers and hurts us really. So I want you to think about the feedback you get as just being feedback. It's not failure, it's just feedback. And by listening to negative or criticism in a place that's feeding it back about what we're not doing very well, we're able to distinguish that from ourselves and say, okay, maybe I did get it wrong on that time. It doesn't make me a bad worker. It doesn't make me a bad advocate. I just got it wrong that day. And culturally as a team, we need to create that space where that's okay. So people's failures or feedback, they aren't punished in a punitive way. They're just there and in a way almost celebrated because they will tell you a lot about where you're at. And it's so much better as a service that we're looking after one another, able to say, do you know what, I got that wrong that day. That's much more wholesome and healthier in walking that walk and looking after ourselves rather than a blame culture of pointing the fingers. So that's what I want you to think about, is how you look after yourself and how you look after one another.